frankly, this reminds me so much of your history and ours too in the United States. But I think famously Winston Churchill making the case in 1938 that the UK had to rearm to face a rising Germany, and laying out how unready British forces are to do this. And so this feeling today, it feels a bit like that. And I feel for my own country that as well. And so we're in this together.
Rishi Sunak today insisting that Britain is not seeking a confrontation with Houthi rebels after a second round of airstrikes by the US and UK in Yemen last night. The Prime Minister told MPs in the Commons today that he would not hesitate to approve further action if attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea continued.
Mr. Speaker, I want to be very clear. We are not seeking a confrontation. We urge the Houthis and those who enable them to stop these illegal and unacceptable attacks. But if necessary, the United Kingdom will not hesitate to respond again in self-defence. We cannot stand by and allow these attacks to go unchallenged. Inaction is also a choice.
Well, a Houthi army spokesperson said the latest strikes against the rebel group will not go unanswered or unpunished. Joining me now is Jim Townsend, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence for NATO, for European and NATO Policy, ensconced at the Pentagon for many years, a man of great experience, particularly plugging in to what the US approach is to this. First of all, though, welcome, Jim. Thanks for being with us again.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
I wonder what you make of the fact that a second airstrike. Of course, the US has sort of carried out airstrikes since that initial one between the two countries, but another coalition effort last night. And our Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, has said that it sent the clearest possible message that the US and UK will continue to degrade the Houthi ability to carry out these attacks. But I wonder whether this is going to do the job and whether the message is not clear enough in reaching those Houthi rebels, whether they're up for listening to it at all.
Well, I think that's exactly the point. I'm not sure they're up to listening to it. I think they know that we've lost our patience, US, UK, and the coalition. And they need to know that we're going to continue to strike until they don't have the means to fire rockets and missiles at us, because we destroy their launchers and their storage sites. But, it's Iran that has to keep they're continuing to supply the Houthis. So there's an Iran problem too. We've got to squelch that resupply as well as hit those targets, and it's going to be a while.
Yeah, and look, whilst we figure that out, I wonder, and this is what I'm interested to know. The US is more than capable of operating on its own in this, but it does this with other countries as a show of strength, not because of defensive military capabilities. And Rishi Sunak today, our Prime Minister, talking up the fact that the United Kingdom will not hesitate to respond again in self-defence. We cannot stand by and allow these attacks to go unchallenged. Can the UK follow through on its promises to take a stand? Do we rely on the United States too much in this sort of grandiose, in this speaking up of our part in this conflict?
Well, it's a great question. And I think an important point is that the U.S. likes working with the UK in these kinds of missions. The UK has an excellent military. We work alongside each other very well. You can see this with the Houthis. And we need the help because we're stretched pretty thin ourselves. I think the only thing I would say to your question is that we need more Brits. We need more British aircraft, more British pilots. Because we're having now trouble with a lot of action, both in Ukraine, in terms of trying to make sure we can protect Europe from the Russians. We've got issues all across the Middle East where the U.S. particularly is being attacked. And then we've got an Indo-Pacific theater where things could get very hot there. And so the U.S. feels stretched, very stretched. And having the UK alongside is critical to helping us deal with all these problems. And so I think it's really a matter of get us more Brits.
The problem, Jim, is I'm not sure that we've got enough or, if any, to give. And I'll reference some comments made last week. There was a huge signal of concern by General Lord Dannatt, former chief of the General Staff, very, very senior within the British Army, who said that our armed forces were declining in number dramatically. He was a little exasperated was how he sounded about that, and mentioned that the Royal Navy may have to decommission 2 warships and mothball the 2 amphibious landing ships for lack of sailors. We haven't got enough sailors. We've got some new frigates coming, but we're going to have to decommission older ships in order to staff the new frigates when they don't need to be decommissioned. What do you honestly think in the United States about our approach to defence and the amount of money and the recruitment behind our armed forces?
Well, I have noticed that as well. A lot of us in Washington have noticed the problems that the Royal Navy is having and what their course of action seems to be. And so I think some of the newspaper editorials that you've mentioned, I think we very much agree with that. But it's the problem is that for the United States as well, and other allies, the French, the Germans, when the Cold War ended in early 1990, we all took a bit of a vacation from defense and spending on defense. We all did it in our own different ways, but in the United States, we have found the U.S. Navy is scrambling right now to try to come up with enough ships to handle a China contingency, as well as what's happening in the Red Sea, and also having ships go back to Europe, where we thought we weren't going to have trouble because the Soviet Union had gone away, the Russian military was not a threat, and now here we find ourselves scrambling to make up for some inaction and perhaps some bad decisions over the past number of years. In both administrations, Republican and Democratic. And I think with the UK, it's something similar, and the other allies too. And now we're finding that we're having to scramble. And frankly, this reminds me so much of your history and ours too in the United States. But I think famously Winston Churchill making the case in 1938 that the UK had to rearm to face a rising Germany, and laying out how unready British forces are to do this. And so this feeling today, it feels a bit like that. And I feel for my own country that as well. And so we're in this together. But for sure, I think the Royal Navy, but I think the Army has issues too. And so does the RAF. I mean, all the service sets have issues, and we've got them in the United States too. Our recruitment for the Army.
Yeah. How concerned is the United States about the dwindling force of the British military, of what we have in our defensive arsenal? How concerned is the United States about that as a sort of a point of reference?
Well, I would say the U.S. is concerned, not just with UK, but as I mentioned, all of the allies are scrambling. Some are not. But the allies that really count when it comes to military, certainly UK is top of the rank. And the thing is that NATO has embarked on a major defensive plan to protect Europe, to protect the alliance from a rising Russia. And to do that plan, all the allies have to come forward with the equipment that NATO says it needs to have on the front lines. And so for the United States, we've been urging allies and ourselves to make this a top priority, to be able to provide NATO what it says it needs, as well as to fulfill some of the coffers that are bare now because of equipment being sent to Ukraine. So this is a big deal.
Look, thank you for speaking to us. I wanted to get the honest view from across the pond, really, as to sort of where you stand about the UK's part in all this. And we are allies and we like to operate together. But how much has the UK got to offer in this day and age? Some good points made. Thank you, Jim Townsend, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence for European and NATO Policy, former senior Pentagon official. Good to speak to you.